Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Apologies for the delays. We had a couple of technical challenges there. So we would normally wait a few minutes to give everyone the opportunity to connect. I think it's fair to say that at 5 to 6 past, everybody has connected at this point. So thank you for joining us today and being part of our community. We have some housekeeping that I'd like to go over just before we start. We've got some great content planned. Feel free to ask questions at any time by typing in the IM window. Be aware that anything you post will be publicly visible. If you prefer, you can post your questions anonymously by checking the box right below where you enter your question. We've had a large number of people register across the whole webinar series. We're really thrilled to see this level of interest, but bear in mind it won't be possible to answer all questions potentially in real time during the session. We do have a couple of people standing by to help answer questions, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can during the call. If you visit aka.ms/AIP Q&A, you'll see a post dedicated to the webinar questions. We'll review the questions transcript after this session, and we'll post further answers to this location. If you're listening to the recording after today's events and you have any questions, this is also the place to post those questions. And we are recording today's webinar, and this will be shared publicly. We'll post the recordings on our community at aka.ms/AIP recordings. So talking of community, if you haven't already signed up to, please come and join us at aka.ms/security community. This is the best way to ensure you don't miss out on any future webinars. It's where we post our major announcements and a place where you can interact directly with our engineering teams that create our security products. You'll be able to influence our product designs, get early access to changes by doing things like participating in private previews, requesting features, reviewing our roadmap, and attending in-person events as well as webinars like today. So as I mentioned, we have some great content planned for today. Today's session is part 5 of a series of 6 on Azure Information Protection, or AIP for short. Throughout this series, we'll be walking you through all the major features of AIP and showing you how to deliver and configure each part. So the housekeeping out of the way, I would like to introduce you to the team on the call today. Leo Lukov will be presenting and is one of our resident AIP experts on the call. He's a program manager in our AIP team and part of our AIP product group. As part of his role, Leo is responsible for the AIP analytics feature, so he's well suited to help with today's topic on monitoring. On the call, we also have Martin and myself, Adam, to help answer questions. So with that all covered off, I will pass over to Leo.
Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you very much, all of you, to joining our call. As Adam mentioned, this is session number 5 in a series of our calls. In the previous sessions, you heard the introduction about Azure Information Protection. You had a session about data discovery at rest, data classification, and label taxonomy. You had a session about protection, how you can protect your data at rest and in motion. And today we're going to speak about the 4th pillar, which is monitoring. Adam, I do hear some echo. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, Leo.
All right, excellent. So today we're going to speak about the 4th pillar, which is about monitoring and how you can visualize your Azure Information Protection product adoption. So the main goal of Azure Information Protection Analytics is to help you better understand your sensitivity landscape. With Azure Information Protection, it gives you deep insights into classified, labeled, and protected documents across your organization, such as where your sensitive data is, whether it isn't protected or not, what kind of sensitive information types it contains, and how it is being used. With other information protection analytics, you can answer various questions, such as which users have access to a specific label document, what kind of sensitivity information types the document contains, for example, whether that specific document contains credit card number, PII data, health-related information, and so on, whether a document label has been upgraded or downgraded, and by which user, For example, users open the document which is classified as highly confidential and decided to downgrade it into public. This is kind of information that you'd like to know. In many more scenarios. These capabilities are all possible today with the collection of data aggregation and of information protection data, audit events from various sources. For example, Azure Information Protection clients, Azure Information Protection Scanner, Windows Defender ATP, and a growing ecosystem of partners who decided to join and integrate with Microsoft Information Protection SDK to experience their own apps and services using information protection. So for example, Adobe Acrobat are one of those vendors who integrated with Microsoft Information Protection SDK. And in fact, now you can also consume labels from Adobe Acrobat, and you can monitor the usage of those labels within AP. So I'd like to start with the usage report. If you open your Azure Information Protection admin on the left-hand side, you'll see an analytics section here. And if you click on the usage report, basically this is your landing page. This is your starting point when you can better understand the label usage across your organization. In this page, you can basically go over your label and protected activity. Over time, you can see total number of labels, total number of protections from the last 31 days. You can monitor number of users, the number of devices who are currently connected to Azure Information Protection Analytics and send their audit data. You can monitor data growth and overall product adoption. In the past, when you deployed Azure Information Protection, it was like more like as a black box. You deployed it, you knew that your end users are using it, but it was impossible for you to track the overall adoption. So the main purpose of this screen is to help you answer these kind of questions. For example, what kind of labels are my end user are using? So you'll be able to answer this question by looking at this chart here and see the overall label distribution. How many labels were classified as general, how many confidential, personal, and so on and so forth. Also on the right-hand side, you can see the label distribution by application. So that would help you understand what percentage of applications generated certain labels. In this case, for example, you can see that 22% of the labels were assigned by Microsoft Word, another 15% by AP Scanner, and so on and so forth. In fact, to give you more flexibility, you can even customize it and create your own custom reports. I'll show it in later on how you can do that, but just give you some overview. So clicking on the small icon on the right-hand side, that would open the Azure Monitor environment. That would take a second. And from this screen, you can basically type in your own queries, run your own queries, and generate your reports. And you can export this data to various sources, such as to CSV or even to Power BI, when you can manage and write your own reports. All right, so after we covered the usage report, which is basically quite basic, I'd like to have a deeper dive into more interesting blades under AP Analytics. So I'll start with the activity log. The activity log helps you investigate information protection activities either by user, by device, or by label. So with Azure Information Protection Activity Log, you can inspect all your information protection activities in one place. For example, activities on sensitive documents of interest, labeled as highly confidential, track label changes, track who is the user who accesses those documents, what kind of activities have been performed from a specific device, and what kind of detailed information is included in those documents. Let's start with a quick example. And by the way, all this session is going to be like a hands-on session. I'd like to give you as many examples, many live examples as possible, so you fully understand the capabilities of Azure Information Protection Analytics. So let's start with the first scenario. I'd like to track all the activities by a user called Candy. Simply going to type in Candy within that box and filter. And now you see all the activities by Candy. So you can see the documents that Candy has accessed. You can see the documents that Candy has upgraded their label, some discover session activities, and so on. So for instance, if I'll simply just open this specific record, which is called customer data from 2015, I get a deeper view of that activity. I can see the activity date and time. I can see the item path, where the file is located, how the file was accessed. I can see that the actual activity here, that there was a label upgrade. The label before that action was public, and Candy actually upgraded that label into confidential, all employees. And I can get some more general information about the device, the IP address, if that file is at risk, in case I have Windows Defender, what platform, and so on. Now let's see another scenario. I'm going just now to filter that. And let's take a look again at all our activity logs and search for any activities on documents which are of type confidential or highly confidential. So I was going to tick those ones here and filter. And now I can see who are all the users who've been accessed or monitored or modified confidential or highly confidential information. One of an interesting activity to track is normally labeled downgrades. So if I'm going now to choose specifically label downgrade, so simply just go to the activity and click on downgrade the label. All right, and let's pick all the labels now. And now I can see all the label downgrades activities overall, and I can open them. I can just pick one and open it and get more information about that specific activity. We've done lots of integrations with other products within Microsoft. One interesting one is with the Windows Defender ATP. Windows Defender ATP basically tracks devices, monitor devices within the organization, and can give you score, a risk score of that device. For example, if that device believes to contain malicious code or been accessed during abnormal hours and so on. So Windows Defender ATP is capable of giving you that risk of that device. And we integrated that information within the activity log. So in fact, now you can also search for label downgrades done from devices which are believed to be at risk, and you can choose the risk level of your interest. Now I'd like to show you another interesting scenario. So we've selected all the labels. In the previous session, I think that was on session number 3, you basically, there was an introduction about Azure Information Protection Scanner. And Scanner allows you to have, to basically scan all your on-prem file repositories in order to identify sensitive data within those file repositories. What I'd like to do now is basically show you a result of that scanner. So if I'm going to the application name and I'll pick AAP Scanner and click on Filter, now you can see all the documents that have been scanned by the AAP Scanner. Let's just open one of them. Let's open the customer data 2017, which is a highly confidential document. Now, if I'll open it, so first of all, you get all the general information about what time that file is being scanned by AP scanner, who is the user, what is the label of that document. But you can also get a deeper insight into what is the information types that that document contains. So for instance, the AP scanner managed to detect that the customer data 2017 also contains credit card numbers and German driving license numbers, and all variety of sensitive information types out of nearly 100 sensitive information types that are available. And AP Scanner can give you a list of those information types. And in fact, you can also run AP Scanner and choose that you'd like to get the actual information type matches. So this is totally configurable. By default, this is disabled. But if you choose to enable that functionality, then you can also open the information type matches and get the actual information type matches. So in that example, I found out 3 credit card numbers within this file, and here I can see the actual credit card numbers that AP Scanner detected. So this is really powerful capability. Now I'd like to show you another example. Let's take a look now. So from what we see here, these are all discovery activities. Means that the AP Scanner basically just ran on those files, detected the label, detected the information types, and reported those records. AP Scanner, in fact, can run in 2 different modes. It can run in discovery mode, where basically you set the file repositories of interest. AP Scanner goes over those file repositories, discover what files are under these repositories, and reports the scanner findings. Or you can run AP Scanner in enforcement mode. In enforcement mode, the AP Scanner not only would scan those files, but it would actually also apply a label on those files. Let's take a look at some of those examples. So simply what I'm going to do now is I already selected application name AP Scanner. I'm going to choose new label. You see that I have AP Scanner selected. And now if I'm going to filter those results, I'll get a full list of files which the AP Scanner actually classified with a new label. Because I ran AP Scanner in enforcement mode on those file repositories. So for instance, I'd like to open one of these files. Let's open this one. And you can see that this file actually AP Scanner identified that the file contains some French social security number. And here you can see the actual details of that French SSN. It detected European social security number. And due to the fact that the scanner detected those sensitive information types, and I had a predefined condition that whenever those information types are detected, those files should be classified as confidential, AP Scanner managed also to put a new label as confidential anyone to those documents. So from the activity log, basically you can do all kind of slice and dice based on activity date. You can look back at previous time periods. You can search on activities by specific user. You can search for activities by specific file path or file name. You can search by selected activities, labels, a specific device name, application name, and device risk. So this is a very strong investigation tool, which gives you basically visualizes all your information protection audit data and gives you the ability to slice and dice it according to your preference. Now, after we understood the activity logs, I'd like to show you another blade, which is called data discovery. While the activity log aims to help you investigate specific activities by specific users, data discovery comes to answer a more general question of where is my sensitive data? Where the sensitive data within my organization resides? And to give you an overall view of how many labels do you have within your entire organization from each type, what kind of sensitive information do you have? How many credit cards do you have? How many European national identification numbers, and so on. And also gives you the locations of those files. So for instance, I can see that under this file repository, SI Islands Public, I found 56 files which are labeled and which contains 207 files which contain sensitive information types. I can go under and I can filter this information. For instance, if I'd like to answer a question such as where do I have only information which contains confidential or highly confidential data, I simply just select those labels from here. And now I'll get the full list of file repositories and endpoints, which include classified, confidential or confidential data. I can also search for specific information type of interest. Let's try to answer a question of where do I have within my file repositories and endpoints documents which contain credit card numbers. So I'm going to choose information type credit card number and filter that again. And now I see that I have overall 23 files were detected containing this credit card number under this file repository, and 4 more files were detected under this endpoint, which are labeled. And this is a total number of files which are currently labeled or unlabeled. So I have 56 files labeled or unlabeled, which contain credit card numbers under this file repository, and 66 more files contain credit card numbers under the endpoint. And I can actually drill down. So let's open this file repository. And now I can see all the files under this file repository which contain credit card number. So from this table here, you can see the file name. You can see if that file currently contains a label or not. And you can see what kind of information type matches are under this file repository. And also who is the last user who modified those files. And of course, I can click on that specific record and see more information about that file, where the file is located, what's the current label, and so on. I would like to go back to the discovery screen and show you another powerful capability of data discovery. So far we've seen how we can filter by labels, how we can filter by specific information type of interest, and we took the example of a credit card number. I'd like to show you now how we combine that with credential scanning capabilities in order to identify locations of usernames and passwords within your file repositories. Many of us, including myself, sometimes whenever we are working on something and we just want to keep our password somewhere, we just open Notepad or Word document, put it there, and hopefully believe that we'll delete it a few minutes later. But what happens if that person forgot to remove that sensitive information, those usernames and passwords from that document? How can you detect that? So if I'm going to click on information type, now you'll see that you have a variety of Azure Information Protection information types, which are specifically looking at user credentials such as passwords, auth keys, connection strings, Azure Storage account keys, and so on. I'm just going to choose all this bunch of sensitive credentials. I'm going to select them, and let's run again another search on all my file repositories that I scanned and see if I can find one of those. And here in this very same file repository, I can see that I found 8 files which contains one of those information types. And in fact, none of them are labeled. So that means that I have hard-coded credentials on files within my file repositories, and they are currently not protected and they're open to the public. So this is definitely something that I should be able to deal with and mitigate. Let's take a look at those files. So here are the different files that I found. I'm going to open one of them. And now we can get more information about that file. Again, where is the file located, file name, and here are the different information type matches that we identified. So we identified that this file contains Azure Public Settings passwords and auth keys. And again, if we enable the AP scanner to send information, including the information type match content, then I can also open those matches, and I can actually see the usernames, the hard-coded usernames or the hard-coded auth keys within those documents. And I can see who is the user basically created those documents. So as an admin, I would better approach that user and say, and notify that user that hard-coded credentials have been detected, and that person should take care of his credentials better. All right, so far we covered, let me just open it again. So we went over the usage report. We went over the usage report, which basically gives you the overall usage of the product adoption. We went over the activity logs, which is an investigation tool for specific activities by specific user, specific device. And we covered the data discovery blade. Now I'd like to show you something else. Let me just open another view. Let me just open it. And basically, this is still in development. So this is available from the different path now, which is called the Azure Information Protection Recommendation Blade. If in the previous blades, we gave you tools that you can run your own investigation and you can run your own data discovery, the main purpose of the recommendation blade is to give you as an Azure Information Protection admin very specific recommendations of how you can better configure your system, configure Azure Information Protection, and take actions both on our own detections, which we believe that should be fixed or should be modified. So for instance, within the recommendation blade, you can see that we identified unprotected sensitive data in various locations. For example, 6 files were detected that contain social security number and are currently unprotected. You can see also alerts or recommendations around credit card numbers, bank account numbers, and so on. So clicking on one of these recommendations would give you more information about the system recommendation. In that example, 6 files were detected that contain social security number, and they are currently unlabeled. So clicking on the view data here will basically take you into the locations of those 6 files which contain social security number. But what we'd like to encourage you here is basically to take an action. So to prevent having social security numbers in the future unprotected, you can actually create an automatic classification rule that whenever social security number is detected in the future, this file is going to be classified automatically with a certain label, or the end user would get a recommendation that a social security number has been detected on that file, and the end user is encouraged to classify the document with a certain label. So how you do that? You can basically configure this action from this screen. you can choose that whenever social security number is detected, you can classify that document, for example, as confidential, available to all employees. You can decide if you'd like to set this classification automatically, or whether you'd like to just apply it as a recommendation. So the end user would be able to choose if whether to accept that recommendation or not. And you can also dictate what is the minimum number of occurrences. So let's say, for example, that only whenever I identify 5 social security numbers within a document, then I'd like to automatically apply or send a recommendation that that file should be classified as confidential. All right, and let's close that. At the beginning of this session, I showed you that basically you have this predefined usage report, right? And we said that we can basically, this predefined usage report, and we said that you can basically also write your own custom queries in order to generate your own custom reports. I'd like to show you how you can do that. So basically what you do here is you open the log analytics link here. That basically takes you into that screen. And here I prepared some queries of interest that I'd like to show you. So for example, the first query is all about querying activities, data activity, audit activities of a label downgrade. So this is a very simple query language. We are using KQL, which stands for Cousteau Query Language. More information about the Cousteau Query language is available by clicking on this help button. After a number of days of practice, you'll see that you're very familiar with the very basic capabilities of the Cousteau Query language, and you'll be able to run those kind of queries on your own. So in this example, I simply searched for all audits logs with the activity label downgrade, and I basically summarized them over time. So you can see that here I have the different dates and total number of label downgrades during this time. Clicking on this chart would also show you how these label downgrades are distributed over time. I can actually run even more complex query, which looks at the actual users who downgraded that document. So let me run this query here. So this query looks at basically all the activities within the last 31 days of data of activity downgrade, label downgrades, from documents which contain confidential keywords or highly confidential and were downgraded into a non-confidential label. And here I have a summary that's this time by users and by total number of label downgrades. So I can actually see who are the users, who are the top users who downgraded labels within my organization within the last 31 days. If I'm going simply now just to remove that comment here, I can actually see, I can actually inspect the actual downgrade activities of that users. So for instance, I can see that this specific user, the user Megan, on the 18th of March, is downgraded the document, and here is the file name, from confidential into general. So this is quite powerful. If you'd like to have more information about how you can write your own queries, so first of all, the audit scheme itself is under functions, information protection events. If we'll check out our documentation, our online documentation for central reporting, then you can scroll down and you'll see that there is a whole section here which basically describes what is the scheme, the main scheme of our audit logs, where you can actually write your own queries. And here you'll get the full information about what are the column names within that scheme and what is the description. And here are also some useful examples which you can copy and paste to run those scenarios. I'd like also to recommend a great blog by Rafael Dominguez, basically gives you even more information about how you can run your own custom reports with integration into Azure Active Directory. So check out this blog. It's called Create Richer Reports with Microsoft Information Protection and Azure AD. And you can see great examples of how you can slice and dice the information from your activity logs together with Azure Active Directory logs. All right, so let's go back to our portal. So basically what we've done so far, we discussed about the usage report and we saw how you can create a label. We saw the activity log and how you can investigate your actions. We covered the data discovery, when you can see where your sensitive data resides on on-prem repositories and on endpoints. And we discussed the data recommendation. By the way, something that I didn't mention earlier, in order to be able to inspect data on endpoints, it requires a Windows Defender ATP integration, which basically scans those file repositories, scans those endpoints and reports what kind of sensitive information type have been, what kind of sensitive information have been detected on those endpoints. In the rest of the session, I'd like to discuss some more technicalities of how you configure Azure Information Protection Analytics, what are the prerequisites, what versions are supported. So first of all, Azure Information Protection audit events are being collected from AIP clients v1, AIP client v2, which is also called the version which supports unified labeling. It collects audit data from AIP Scanner, and it collects also information, audit data from applications using the MIP SDK 1.1, for example, Adobe Acrobat, Windows Defender ATP, which is running on Windows 10 version 1809 or later. And in the near future, we'll also include audit logs from MCAS and from RMS. As for the specific versions which supports AIP Analytics, you should be running version AIP Preview 138.7 or above. And if you're looking for GA version, so the previous GA version 141.51 also fully supports AIP Analytics. As for endpoint discovery capabilities, you'll need the version 1.45. Regarding licensing, all the AIP Analytics capabilities that are demonstrated today on usage reports and activity logs and data discovery are available with the EMS E3 license or Azure Information Protection P1 license. As for specific automation capabilities that I showed you regarding in the scenario when AIP Scanner scanned the files and automatically assign the label. So for that specific capability, you need the EMS E3 or the Azure Information Protection P2. But the main thing that I want you to take from this session is that all the monitoring capabilities that we've seen, including data discovery by the scanner, are also available from the general EMS E3 license. So what do you have to do in order to configure your Azure Information Protection to consume analytics data? So in order to do that, you have here the Configure Analytics button. And clicking on Configure Analytics basically allows you to choose a workspace where all your audit data is stored. We chose Azure Monitor workspaces. So that means that all the audit data that is collected from your clients, from your AIP Scanner, from your Windows Defender endpoints are being sent into and stored into that workspace that you choose, that you monitor, that you provision. And all the queries that you and all the reports that you see that I showed you in this session are basically sitting on top of that. So that means that all the reports and all the charts consume the data from the workspace that you manage. So in order to set AP Analytics, you need to first of all starting by creating your new workspace if you do not have one defined already. So clicking on this new workspace would take you into this wizard when you basically can specify the workspace name, choose the subscription model, choose a resource group, and choose a pricing tier. And after you set up a workspace, then and clicking, just click that because I already have a workspace, and check that box, that means that data is going to be sent into that workspace. By default, this box here is disabled. But remember, I showed you earlier in some examples that we can also capture the sensitive information type matches. For example, the actual credit card number or the actual user credentials. So this is where you control if you'd like to send this information or not. By default, this is disabled. But if you check that box, that means that this sensitive information type is going to be sent and is going to be available from your analytics. Choosing a workspace does have extra charges. And I'd like to take you now to the Azure Monitor page, where basically it describes the pricing model. All of you are eligible for 5 GB of data free of charge per month. Whenever you're registered to Azure Monitor Log Analytics and choose a workspace, any data that you consume beyond these 5 GB, there would be an extra charge of $2.30 per gigabyte. And if you're interested in data retention longer than 31 days, then the actual charge is 10 cents per gigabyte per month for that retention. Now, a good question would be, so how much data am I expected to generate? How much audit data am I expected to generate over a month? And in order to know how would be charged at the end of the month. So just to give you rough estimation, I would say that if your tenant has 10,000 active users generating data, so you should expect that those 10,000 users would generate roughly between 2 GB of data to 20 GB of data per month. That obviously depends on what kind of information protection services they're using. If they're simply just using clients running as add-ins on Office applications, you're more likely to be around the 2 GB of data per month. If you also have AAP Scanner and Windows Defender ATP, and you generate lots of audit data, then you should be more close to 20 GB of data per month. But even if in the case of the 20 GB of data per month, again, you're looking at roughly $30, given that you have 5 GB. $30 per month, given that you have 5 GB free of charge. And basically, this is the end of the session. And I think just to summarize again, so Azure Information Protection aims to give you visibility into where your sensitive data is within your organization, what your end users have been actually doing within that information, how many labels have been assigned, what kind of labels, which applications generated those labels, which users have configured have accessed those sensitive documents, from which devices, and where all these sensitive files are located. I'd like to thank you very much for joining, and I'd like to hand the session back to Adam if we have some time to discuss some questions.
Thank you very much, Lior. And that was a really great session, actually. I learned a few things in there as well. So we had a couple of technical challenges at the start of the session today. Unfortunately, one of the challenges we're also having is that the Q&A feature is not available. So for those people that have been trying to ask questions, it's not you. It is a challenge with our platform today. What I would suggest is that we have the URL I mentioned at the start of the session, which is aka.ms/AIPQ&A. Look, if you do have any questions, please head over to that URL, post them there. We will spend some time in the next few days reviewing those questions and trying to answer any questions you might have. Also, as you can see on the slide there, we do have some URLs that will be useful for you to bear in mind. So thank you very much for joining us today. If you don't have the rest of the series and there's one session left next week, you can join it. You can find it at aka.ms/AIP webinar. We've got the URL for recordings there as well, where you can find the recordings for all this series. And if you haven't already, please do come and join our community. Apologies for the technical difficulties we've experienced today. Hopefully, and we've not had any so far, so we've been pretty lucky, I guess. But hopefully we won't have any more for next week either, and you'll be able to ask your questions during the session. So if you've got nothing further you want to add, Lior, I will close the session out there. And I'll take that as a no. So look, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Lior. Really appreciate your time today. And we'll see you all again next week or on Thursday if you're following the MCAS series. Thank you very much.